Welcome back, everybody. Jiu Jitsu Motivation Podcast. My name is Greg Melita, black belt second degree, owner of Hampton's Jiu Jitsu.
And I am Brian DeLuca, black belt and author of Jiu Jitsu for Small People and other weird shit I think about.
You think about a lot of weird shit, Brian.
I do think about a lot of weird shit, man. You gotta see the next book. It's horrible.
All right. So today we got Amanda Leve with us today, just coming off an amazing performance at WNO, and really excited to have her on. So Amanda, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you guys for making time and having me.
So yeah, I mean, let's start with that. I mean, taking the grappling world by storm there, beating Gabi Garcia at the last WNO event. I mean, even on your social media, it was just amazing to see, not only the grit and like just the mental aspect, like just going in there and just doing what you got to do. I mean, can you just tell us a little bit about the experience of it all?
I just want to start with, that was probably one of the most exciting fights of 2021. 100% hands down.
I hope someone said, there was like an article that said upset of the year. I think Flo put it out. I'm like, damn right it is. But yeah, it was just like a cool experience because that Who's Number One championship, they had so much money on the line for everybody. Like, it was just really cool. They made everything super professional. Even like the day before, like revealing the bracket and having everyone at the table to talk and stuff was super cool to be a part of. But yeah, I mean, just the overall experience was freaking awesome. And after my Gabi win, it was so hard to like mentally come back from winning that. Like afterwards, I'm like, I feel like I kind of just won the whole thing. Do I have to compete again? But like, it was really hard to like recover physically, and then mentally it was also hard to recover. But I mean, Rafael is a beast, and I did fairly well against her for not wanting to really compete after the Gabi match. So I'm really happy with the turnout of my other matches. But like I said, it was just a great freaking experience.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that on the show a lot. Like when I was at the last ADCC live, I mean, Lachlan Giles was just, it stands out in my mind as and he didn't even win the event. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like to be exciting and having a memorable experience. I mean, you don't have to win the event. You got to be exciting in this day and age,
Mm-hmm.
Yep, for sure. And it was like pretty cool too. Like I blew up on Instagram, and then I'm like scrolling on my feed, and I'm like, oh, look, it's me. Oh, look, it's me again.
I was like that. Anyone who grapples, right? That match brings like pure joy to your heart when you watch it. I swear. Like I was like I get so happy watching that match. It's just awesome.
It's pretty cool how many people like reached out and like continuously messaged me and like, I just watched your match like 5 times today and I still can't get over it. And I'm like, hell yeah. I watched it a couple times too.
And then that one post on Instagram you put up, now was that your dad that sent you a text before the match? He's like, you're gonna shock the world. Is that what it was?
Yeah. So my dad is like, well, he got me into jiu-jitsu to start. And my dad is one of those dads that like people talk about that are like, oh my God, they're so hard on their kid. Like I couldn't imagine being that hard on my kid. That was my dad. My dad was that dad. I mean, it made me a way better athlete, I believe, and way more mentally tough than mostly everyone I know. So I'm like thankful for that. And his like belief in me is like beyond compare. So I was even leading up to this, I kind of had a feeling that I was going to fight Gabi first. And I would just be like, make comments like, oh, well, I'm going to get Gabi first. So, I mean, I guess we'll see how that goes. My dad's like, stop talking like that. He's like, you can beat her. I don't know why you keep talking like that. And then like the day before when I called her out at the press conference, I wasn't even going to say anything because I'm not like a really controversial person at all. And I was just so annoyed that she didn't weigh in and they recorded all of our weights. I'm like, what is this bull crap? I'm like, why do I have to step on the scale? She's not stepping on the scale. And then she walked in like so arrogantly afterwards to like sit down at the press conference table. But when I saw her walk in, like to my boyfriend and my coach, I'm like, this is freaking annoying. I'm like, I'm about to say something. And my boyfriend's like, wait till the press conference. And I'm like, yeah. And I wasn't going to say anything. Then I called my dad and I'm like, yeah, can you believe Gabi didn't weigh in? He's like, say it at the press conference. Freaking say it. And I was like, all right. I'm going to say it at the press conference. So, like I said, it was just super cool that they revealed the bracket in front of us, and the way they did it was pretty neat.
Right.
So yeah, so then the next morning I was like super nervous, and literally maybe like, I think that was like 10 or 15 minutes before I even went on. He texted me, "You're going to shock the world." Yeah, I was like, that was pretty cool. Cool setup.
Oh yeah.
Did they ever give an answer why? I know her answer was like, "It's in my contract," or "You don't know my
Well, yeah.
contract."
How did the dialogue go? What was the dialogue again at the conference? Like there was a little back and forth, wasn't it?
Yeah, she was wearing a shirt that said, "Don't be a pussy."
Hmm.
And she said that to me too. I think Anna Carolina was even like, "You don't be the pussy. You step on the scale. Let's see your weight. Don't be a pussy."
Mhm.
But it was just me. I just said, no, I really was excited to fight Gabi because I was really excited to see how I could do against her. When I've seen like Kendall Roosing go against her, Elizabeth Clay go against her. So I'm like, okay, if they can handle their own, like I could definitely handle my own. I want to see how I can do against her. So I said I was excited to go against her. I was not even disrespectful. She was online the next day, like calling me disrespectful and all this stuff. I'm like, I didn't say anything to you. All I said was, I just want to know why you didn't weigh in and we had to weigh in. But they never gave me an answer. But the answer was that it was not in her contract. There was nothing in her contract that said that. And she just, I guess, was using that as the excuse. But she just made herself look so terrible, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely.
Like you could tell she was super caught up and didn't know what to say.
Yeah, I forget exactly what they posted, but I mean, I think Flo posted, literally that kind of back and forth exchange, and that started. I think that was it. That was a good call because like that I think attracted people to watch the match too. It was like, yo, man, like, why wouldn't she step on the scale? And that was kind of a shitty move. And let's see what goes down now, And then on top of that, to do what you did in that fashion, it just made it that much better,
Yeah, so it was funny too because my sister, I guess, saw the post that they posted about me like stirring the pot kind of deal, and my sister's telling my mom because they're back in Philadelphia, and my sister's like, I think Amanda is like starting something over at like the. And my mom's like, my Amanda? Our Amanda is starting something because I am so easygoing. I do not rock the boat ever. And so my mom was even shocked. She's like, our Amanda, are you sure? Are you sure you're not getting this wrong?
I have to say, watching that fight, you looked so small in comparison to her. Like you watched that fight and it was just like, it was crazy.
I say that to everyone. I said, because I'm not a small girl, like to begin with. Like I walk around at 155 to 160. Like that's where my weight fluctuates. And she made me look like I was like 110 pounds. Mm-hmm. So I'm willing to bet she was 100 pounds heavier than me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, because I'm looking at the size difference and I'm like, wow, like.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, us being small jiu-jitsu guys, Brian. I mean, I'm 5'6", 160. You know what I mean? But then when you see Amanda out there fighting with Gabi, and you're like, holy shit, like
yeah, because I'm about the same size as Greg. I'm about 165, right? And and it's like I was just looking at her. I'm like, oh my god, she looks so big in comparison. But when you took her back that first time and put that choke in, that rear naked choke in,
yeah,
I was just like rooting. I was like screaming actually as I'm watching it.
Because we're like, how many times have you seen Gabi? You know what I mean? Like just over the years, and you're like, ah, shit, it's just gonna be a grind out. It's just gonna be, just smashing the opponent, not a lot of action. So like, did you go in? Like specifically leading up to it, did you just take your game and it was a mental thing and you just said, fuck this, I'm just gonna go in and do it? Or did you specifically train for her and her style and weight?
So that night after the press conference, we went to the gym just to go over a couple moves that I was gonna implement in the match. And I have to give Jay Ragobuto, he was like commentating for Who's Number One, but he was also coaching me. I have to give him so much credit because he really did like give me a lot of the moves that I did that match. So he was like, all we need to do is expose her back for 3 seconds. And what did I do? Exposed her back for literally 3 seconds and I was on it already.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But when I'm so amazed at how well this like played out, because if it was almost like we wrote the script the night before, like, okay, I'm going to do this and she's going to do this. And then I'm going to do this and she's going to do this. And then handed it to a director and said, okay, we're going to act this out right now on the mat. And then the next day, every single thing we practiced that night was hit in that match. Every single thing we talked about was done in that match. It was actually insane. It was almost like we spoke it into the universe for it to happen that way.
Well, you sort of knew you were going to fight her, right? You said you had this feeling you were going to draw her, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So like, even like when I had her, when I did 2019 ADCC trials, I had to beat Anna to fight her. And, I was so disappointed. I lost my match to Anna. It was just a decision. And, because I wanted to fight Gabi next. Because like I said, I just wanted to see how I would do against her. Like, this has always been one of my things that I always wanted to fight her eventually, just to see how I could play against her.
And you had her back, what, like 3-4 times in that?
Yeah, 3 times. So back takes were always my thing. And I think just her being so slow with her size, it's just like the perfect style for her, basically. My style just is the perfect style to beat her.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely what it seemed like. Like you said, it seemed like everything just lined up perfectly. You know, the moves that you were gonna hit. I mean, you know, the mentality going in there, like no, like you're gonna shock the world and you're gonna do it. Like there's no, you know, ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, that's like, and just to see that was just so, you know, really inspiring. I mean, and when you got her back those multiple times, did it seem like, because obviously when you know, at that high level, especially somebody that much bigger than you, you know, to get their back, they're a little slower. You can expose the back and get there. But then, you know, trying to sink in the submission there, I mean, you could tire yourself out really quick. I've been in matches where you lock guillotine on and, you know, you really try to finish it. And then if you don't get it, you're just really winded. Did you find yourself like, you know, trying to pace and make sure you didn't like get too tired?
Yeah, so once I started squeezing and I knew I wasn't gonna finish it, like I know her face was red and everything, at one point, but I like knew and I could feel her hands just barely holding on, and I knew I wasn't gonna finish it. So at one point I even just like stopped squeezing and was just like trying to catch my breath on her back, because I thought I take pride in my conditioning for matches. Like I take pride in my cardio and everything. I do not usually get tired. And my coach was like, "Oh, Amanda, you're 5 minutes in," and I'm like, "Holy crap! I'm only 5 minutes into this match. I feel like I'm gonna die." Like moving around her weight on my feet was just so different, like than anything I ever felt. Because even my next match, I didn't feel tired or fatigued. Like I think actually Rafaela was getting tired and fatigued more than I was. So I just couldn't believe it. My cardio was feeling already that crappy at 5 minutes in. And I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe I have 10 more minutes of this. So when I got to her back, yeah, there was just one point that I had the choke locked up, but I wasn't squeezing. I was just trying to gather some air into my lungs again.
Yeah. It was definitely, it was interesting too, because she also wanted none of you standing up, you know, which she was definitely like sitting down doing, like, okay, come into my guard. She didn't want to be on her feet with you.
Yeah. So like if you watch her other matches, she bullies a lot of people on her feet. She like even like will like run them off the mat. And I'm like, you're not doing that to me. So I think I did a really good job of just getting her tired on her feet too. Like eventually her head started even coming down. So I was able to even like be a little more heavy on her head. And then I could tell she was getting tired by her lip color. So her lips were turning like almost like a bluish purple. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, okay, I see something here. So that's why once she sat down, it wasn't really surprising for me to sit down. But also, she like put out an interview that she was trying to do more of a guard game lately. So my boyfriend saw that interview and was like, she's going to sit guard on you. He's like, we're going to make her sit guard on you. And then, like I said, we just wrote the script and she played it out with us.
Awesome.
Wow. Yeah. And then some of the reaction, I mean, first, what was like you said, your Instagram was blowing up and you just saw like, how soon after the match were you like, holy shit, it's just my shit's blowing up?
Immediately. Like once I didn't even look at my phone for the first like 10-15 minutes because Flo had me do like an interview and everything like that. And then I like saw my phone and I'm like scrolling my phone. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just the lock screen. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then Joe Rogan follows me now, which is so freaking cool.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm so honored. So that was probably the most exciting thing, was like the Instagram blowing up and like having Joe Rogan follow me and stuff. Just like seeing like your hard work kind of pay off is worth it.
Oh yeah. And then what was Gabby's I didn't really get to see that either. What was her like post fight kind of like reaction? Did she say anything? Was she like, hey, great job? Or didn't you hear nothing? Or, you know, was it still kind of a weird kind of vibe, or was it all good? Or
no, so I saw her like, I know she like clapped for me when I got my hand raised, because I saw when I rewatched like the video. But then we walked by her and my boyfriend was like, oh, good match, Gabby, and she just kept on walking, like, no.
Wow.
And then I'm pretty sure she was on an electric scooter in Austin, and when she passed me, she called me a bitch in Portuguese. I'm pretty sure, because once I heard it, I literally turned to my coach and Christian. I was like, I'm pretty sure she just called me a bitch in Portuguese. And then I looked up what I thought it was, and that's what it was. So I'm assuming that's what that's what happened.
Wow.
It's not like you mistaked her for someone else, or you know what I mean, or she. You know,
it was very
actually that's a good sign that the win was insanely legit. You know, you gotta look at it that way.
Yeah, I guess I won mentally and physically.
Oh yeah. So what was your history now? Like, did you start pure jiu-jitsu? Did you start MMA and then jiu-jitsu too? Like, how'd that go about?
So when I first started, like the kids class, they would do like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays jiu-jitsu, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays were like a striking class for them. But after I left there, it was just strictly jiu-jitsu for a while, and then I always did striking like on and off, but I never was like straight dedicated to it like I was with jiu-jitsu. So like 13 years I was nonstop jiu-jitsu, and then striking on and off. Like I would do like a couple months, take a year off, a couple months, take a year and a half off, stuff like that. So
right. I was reading, I forgot what site it was on, but they were talking, I think it was a quote from you, and it was talking about you lost your first fight, like your first competition in like 15 seconds, but your dad was like, hey, stay around, fight the next fight, and you won that. And sort of from that point, that's the point where you were sort of addicted to jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, yep. So I cried hysterically, and I literally lost in 15 seconds, cried hysterically, and my gi was like 5 times my size too. I'm like, Dad, why did you let me look like that and compete like that? But yeah, I was like completely done with the day, and my dad was like, you just stay for one more, just do one more. And then I won my next one, and then I was like, oh, this is why people stick around for it.
Yeah, your dad's a good dad for making you stick with it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. He got a lot of crap growing up from other people, but it definitely paid off, I think, for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, and do you think the MMA like oriented training that you've done, you know, fighting MMA and things like that, shaped kind of and led you to be able to win the match, like as opposed to just being a strict jiu-jitsu practitioner and then, you know, going in fighting Gabby? You think the MMA training at all kind of has a play in maybe kind of adding to your existing jiu-jitsu skills in a way?
Maybe recently. I mean, I've been training a lot more MMA, and I think just like the strength and conditioning that I've been doing extra is probably, I think, what helped me a lot with just the physical aspect of the fight. Because when I tell you, like, my grips have never felt that shot before. Like, you know, when you do like your first tournament and you blow your grips off in the first match because you don't realize how hard, like that was my grips, like just completely done. My whole body hurt the next day. I was like limping. I was about to drop out, and my boyfriend wanted me to drop out, and I was like, I don't want to drop out. Like, and then all these people were dropping out. I'm like, that's not me. I'm not one to like drop out. Like, I don't want to be that person. And I ended up like sticking around and doing a match. But when I tell you I was so beat up the next day, it was god awful. But I actually probably owe that match to like all the boys I had to fight growing up. So like when I was in like the jiu-jitsu scene at like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, like there was no girls. Like you go to tournaments now, you see a ton of girls. When I was in it, maybe a handful of girls, and then they weren't even my weight because they were like 100 pounds and I was like 130 pounds at 14 years old, like just muscle. So I I just always had to go against boys, and I honestly think they made me 1,000 times more tough, just because like I remember the one time I had like a boy like dropping elbows on my forehead during the match. Like I just like the next day I'm like have this huge like bump on my forehead. I had a boy pull my hair one time in a match. Like the craziest thing. So it's just like the grittiness I think I had growing up and competing in those divisions. I probably owed to winning this match.
Right. Do you think they were extra brutal because you were a girl and you were good? With you?
I think
you're saying like dropping elbows, pulling hair. I mean, come on, it's
damn,
yeah. I think like those two examples, I think that was it. Like definitely because I was a girl, they were doing that stuff. But I mean, a lot of the boys, I appreciate them giving me a tough match like that. Like that, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to win easy. Like I won my first MMA fight in like 2 minutes, and as great as it was and as like accomplished as I felt, I was like, man, there's something so much more rewarding when you fight like tooth and nail and win.
Hard fight, yeah.
So I'm trying to give like another example. So like the Gabi match, someone told me, it was like, you know what? I'm really glad you didn't finish the rear naked chokes, because the first rear naked choke, because then you proved that it wasn't a fluke when you got her back the other times. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, that is such a good way of putting it, because I was so mad that I didn't finish
That's
her.
a great point.
Yeah, I was so mad I didn't finish her. I'm like, man, if I just would have squeezed maybe a little bit like harder, like could I have got it? Like, and I, even though it was a win and it was so great, I was still like questioning it. And then someone said it to me, and I'm like, you know what? You were 100% right. And I legit have not even thought about the fact that I should have finished her ever since.
That's probably why you heard that Portuguese expletive when you walked by her.
Probably.
Yeah. And it's a great point, because, you took her back 3 times in the match, so you were, doing it at will to some degree, right? You were able to take her back, execute your plan, and do it at will. And she really couldn't stop it, which was crazy, because you were going straight into the choke from taking her back.
Yeah, so I was actually shocked how easy it was to sink in the chokes. Like the fact that I was able to get there to, like, it's one thing to get to the back, but it's also another thing with like hand fighting and stuff. Like some people will give you a hell of a fight just trying to get like the choke locked up. And I had virtually no problem locking up a full rear naked choke on her. It was just a matter of, I think, just the strength of her muscular ass fingers getting in there and me not being able to finish the choke. But yeah, I mean, like, again, I think she lacks a lot of like technique in some of the sense, because she just relied on her being so big for so long.
Yeah, her strength and conditioning. And it's interesting you brought up that you're doing a lot of strength and conditioning now, right? We were speaking to Dante Leon the other day, and he talked about like doing a lot of strength and conditioning and being a professional athlete now, right? You need to incorporate that. You can't just do jiu-jitsu anymore.
Yeah, I think it just adds a whole nother level to your game. And then I'm lucky that I have someone who like legit like is like has this stuff down to a science for fighters. Like he did like Paul Felder, Sean Brady, Eddie Alvarez. So he's worked with like a lot of guys. His name's Rich Poehler, and he is literally the best. Like I couldn't ask for a better guy in my corner for a strength and conditioning guy.
Yeah, that's a huge point, especially with like we said, we were talking with Dante, and just the fact that she did outweigh you by that much and was that much stronger. What was more important was your individual strength related to your body type and size. Let alone that she was stronger than you. But if you, within your own strength and conditioning program, were strong for your own body, and you're doing that type of conditioning and strength program, I think that's a huge missing link. I mean, people for years, I would hear, oh, you don't want to lift weights, you'll tighten your joints, you want to be as flexible as you can in jiu-jitsu, but really lifting and strength and conditioning strengthens the joints so you can battle somebody 100 plus pounds over you, and you can weather the storm, if you will. So I really feel like that's also something that people are really realizing that's going to only benefit you. And actually that plays into the mental aspect too. Like you said, the strength and conditioning is going to make you mentally stronger because you're physically stronger for your body. You know, the whole goal isn't to your goal wasn't to get to Gabi's strength size. It was to be relatively strong for your body. And like you said, that was a huge part that pulled you through in that match. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. So like, I think that's what helps too, is just knowing that there's nothing more I could have done conditionally, like strength conditioning wise, that would prepare me for the next match. That's how I like to go into like every single match, is that I know that I could not have done anything more than what I've done so far. So I think that's what helped me too with my PFL debut, was just like I was in the back and warming up, and in my head I'm like, I have no doubt that I could not have done anything more to prepare for this moment. Absolutely nothing. So whatever happens out there is going to happen, and I can't blame it on the fact that I was not prepared, because I can guarantee I could not have done anything more.
Wow. Yeah, there's definitely something to be said too, specifically with MMA. There's a lot more wrestling type of training too, and not just in the sense of, you know, the straight up conditioning of wrestling, which is amazing, but just the technique, like the pure technique of wrestling is something that is different than just pure jiu-jitsu, and that's also probably a huge link that led to your victory too. Just being aware of certain positions, being aware of your body in certain positions, because, you know, let's face it, if you were in that match and you just played bottom the whole time, you know what I mean, or you just tried to play like a De La Riva type of thing, probably wouldn't have worked out the same way. You know, you kept her on her toes, you exposed the back. I mean, that's a attacking, you know, methodology right there, you know.
Yep. Yeah. So I like to be aggressive. I try to always be aggressive during matches. I'm not one to just like sit guard. And I mean, not that you can't be aggressive from guard, but I was just never a guard puller to begin with. I like being on top. I like getting the takedown. Because I think like if you take someone down, I think it's just like automatically right in their head already, like, oh shit, like they already took me down. I'm already losing. So just like having that like one up is just like, oh, like it's such a mental game for me too. Like I just like to be like mentally already breaking them by the time I take them down.
Yeah, no, and you could tell she mentally broke. Actually, you could see it like in that fight from the first time you got her back and got her neck. You broke her, you know, which was amazing.
And I think the crowd really influenced that too, dude. It was so cool hearing the crowd. If I made like an inch towards winning, they just were like, oh, going crazy. So the crowd was like probably one of my favorite parts of that whole match.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the end for a second. When you're like, and it's funny, she didn't even know what was going on. It was like she didn't believe she lost, and I'm like, how could you not realize you lost? Like her face, just sort of like, what's going on? You know, it was crazy.
Yeah. So like when I got her back and I like locked up her rear naked choke, and then I knew I was going to finish it again. So I looked up to the clock and I saw 8 seconds left. So then I was like, oh, and I threw my hands up. I'm like, all right, this is it. And then my boyfriend was like, thank God the crowd was so loud. He was like, because I sounded like a maniac, like, finish her, get back to finishing her. And I like 8 seconds left. I'm like, I'm just throwing my hands up.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. It definitely got the crowd, like everyone watching it, like super excited when you did that. Like everyone was like, yes. I was cheering, you know, at that point too. I was like, yes. I was like, you know.
Yeah.
And we were talking before we went live about just like kind of the state of you know, women's jiu-jitsu specifically. And I mean, not only was that just a huge inspiration for, you know, women athletes all over the place, but where like you came up when, like you said, there wasn't any women in the class, barely any women competing. Compare that to you know, to today. Can you talk a little bit about that and what your thoughts are?
Oh yeah, so it's like exploding right now. I think some of the girl matches are even more exciting to watch than the guy matches now. But it's really cool to see how far women's jiu-jitsu's come from like when I was a kid. Especially because like there was like I don't even remember anyone that I could say that like, oh, I looked up to them for jiu-jitsu. For like women's jiu-jitsu in general. So I remember like Kira Gracie, maybe like that was probably to the extent like you heard of like Mackenzie Dern, but again it was just like not on the scene like it is now. And I think social media probably has a huge part of playing of that too. Like Flo does such a great job of promoting like the women on their cards. And then just like, again, social media just blows it up. So it just makes it way more inclusive, I guess, and draws way more people in.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing that. We just had an event at my academy, just an all women's open mat, and it was open to all academies. And we had, 25 women on a Monday morning, and it was just an amazing vibe. I feel like that's something that needs to be done more of in general in jiu-jitsu, not even women's jiu-jitsu. I mean, how long ago, I mean, I've been training 20 years now. Back then it was just really just not a thing, cross training was frowned upon. You were considered a traitor. I mean, to grow the sport now, I mean, it was evident at my academy that if there was like 10, 11 academies, different women from all over the place, and they were just happy to be there. Just the event itself was something that they were just elated about. And I think that the writing's on the wall with that. Like, I've never seen an event like that. I've only seen academies individually try to do things with like an all women's class or something, but it's not how you're going to grow the sport and, on the longer term. You got to think more bigger picture. I think so. Not even just talking about women's jiu-jitsu, it's just in general to grow jiu-jitsu and grappling. I mean, I think people got to kind of, think a little bit bigger. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I've always been big on cross training, just because I think for competitors, it's just like so hard to get everything that you want from one school. Like, not saying that you can't get everything from one school, and I know there's tons of schools out there that are, but like when you're in certain areas in the country where there's maybe not a big school, like a super school like that around you, I think it's just it's good to cross train, to get different looks, to learn new things. I mean, I've been to like so many different schools growing up through the 13 years of jiu-jitsu. And I know like a lot of people are like dead set that, they want their like lineage from the same person, like all their belts from the same person. And like, I get that. But I think for me, one of the most beneficial things was to get different looks from different schools, from different instructors. Like, I can name literally something that I've learned or took away from each school that another school probably couldn't have given me. So.
Yeah, I mean, even when it was starting to be like, oh yeah, cross training, it was always, yeah, let's go there and show them, what we can do kind of thing. And then it was also, the mentality was, oh, you don't want to cross train and, show anybody what your technique is, because then you might meet them in a tournament. And I'm like, you know what? You're going to have problems if you feel like you're going to go to another academy and they're going to like look at your moves. Like, you have some kind of secret move. Like, your jiu-jitsu is not good enough, man. If you think that, you know what I mean? Oh, don't show them you like De La Riva. Like, what do I don't know. I think that's a smaller minded kind of thing. And I think it's starting to get that way. But particularly here on Long Island, I'm trying to really break that clickiness, if you will.
Yeah, I gotcha. I don't really think there's any secrets in jiu-jitsu anymore. You can watch anyone's tapes nowadays. You can literally.
Oh man, that's my number one quote. That's my number one quote.
Yeah,
you just stole it from me, right, Brian? I always say that.
Exactly, right. Well, and think about how many tutorials are out there on the same thing. It's like, it's great. No one, and we've talked about this so many times. Like, wrestling started with the ancient Greeks, right? There's only so many ways the body moves. There's only so many ways the human body can go.
Yeah, there's no secrets in jiu-jitsu. Everything's on YouTube. You know what I mean? And everything's evolving. So now you have to be on top of what the evolution is. So the secret is in these individual academies isn't what you're showing. You want to always be showing the evolution and the next things that are changing. That's one thing. But it's how you build the culture of the gym, and it's how you convey what to your students, how they should be thinking their training should be. So I think that's one of the things we talk about a lot. It seems like we talk about it every show, but it's that important. So I think that, and the fact that women's jiu-jitsu is exploding, and you are right in the middle of it, because you're like a huge inspiration to everybody now.
Yeah, it was pretty cool how many messages I actually got about just like that match, and from girls who said, I'm the smallest in my gym and your match inspired the hell out of me, and things along those lines. I'm like, hell yeah, girl. I'm glad I could help.
So here's a question for you, Amanda, right? So what do you tell all those kids that are trained jiu-jitsu now, right? You went through this as a kid growing up. What would you tell them? Like, what one piece of advice would you give kids coming up?
I would explain consistency to them, because there were so many times, there's so many times that I didn't want to go, or there was even a time like when I was like 17, 18, where I kind of fell off of it just for like a little bit. Like I would go, you know, maybe once a week instead of like as like 7 days a week, like when I was a kid. But like consistency, just staying with it, even if it is once a week, just staying relevant and in your gym and just training constantly is what makes you like. I read this book. It's called The Outliers.
Great book.
Yeah, and the 10,000 hours chapter, and that basically, you know, you become good at anything if you put 10,000 hours in. So I would probably tell them about just consistency, staying consistent with the sport. I know that's what's helped me. Even consistency in tournaments, like going out and competing. Like people don't realize how much of a skill just competing is.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's so easy to just be good in the gym, but when you put yourself out on the line in competition, it's just a whole nother world.
Well, and I think, you know, back to both the points you made, like cross training, it helps with competing. You know, you're training with different people. You don't know exactly what they're going to do. When you train with the same people at your academy all the time, you know exactly what they're going to do. You know, people's games are pretty consistent usually.
Yep. And then they know all your moves. You're going to know all their moves. So, I mean, again, just getting out there and putting yourself out there. That's another reason why I love doing tournaments so much, is just because you're always getting new looks from different people. And, you know, again, that's why cross training is so important in my view too. But
yeah, I mean, we get so many people out at my place because everybody knows of our places like this, open, inviting to everybody, and we bring in people that specialize in different kind of techniques. So all my students it's normal for them to, oh, he's a blue belt I've never seen before. You know what I mean? Like the big difference to when I was coming up and you're training with the same guys for 10 years. How do you judge growth? You know what I mean? When everybody knows each other's moves and everybody is like growing at the same pace, and okay, you're getting better now, you're getting better because this guy's getting better. And, you know, some people even say that, you know, tournaments sometimes it's very hard to judge progress too, because, you know, there's the adrenaline dump and are they used to that? Or maybe they were sick that day. So I think the you know, the true kind of overall view on somebody's progress in jiu-jitsu is like, when you randomly get different people you're cross training with, how do you react to that? How is your game changing? So you have like, you know, a normal default go-to kind of 5 or 6 moves from top and bottom, no matter who it is. And then now you're able to do that in a tournament style, you know, in a tournament way. I think that's a huge part of it.
For sure. So you'll see in my post-fight interview with the Gabi match, I literally said the sweep I hit on her, the tripod sweep, I said, every one of the guys in the gym knows I do that, so they always defend it. So when I did it to Gabi, it was so easy for me because she didn't even know it was coming. So that's just like the prime example of how just constantly training in the gym with the same people, they pick up on your moves. And then when I did it in a tournament, literally it was one of the most easy sweeps I've ever done ever.
It's so true.
Yep.
Yeah, that proves it right there. I mean, and what about you coming up? Did you mainly, I mean, obviously coming up back then, there was no really different rule sets to compete in. There really was only IBJJF back then. But now, you know, going to WNO and all of that, and obviously I'm sure a lot of competing in IBJJF. What's your opinion of the current rule sets? What do you prefer? Where do you think it's going?
So I really like some sub-onlys. And I like rule sets that award legit submissions and like legit positioning over, let's give like the decision. But it's so hard nowadays because I feel like refs, some of them are just so terrible, like with like giving decisions. And there's so many iffy decisions in jiu-jitsu that it actually amazes me. And then I think the problem with IBJJF is that you get like different rule sets depending on the ref you get. Like, yeah, they have like a basic outline, but just say you're playing guard, right? And they're trying to pass the whole time. One ref will give it to the person playing guard, even though maybe they didn't get a submission. And another ref would look at that same match and give it to the person passing because maybe they're putting more effort in, they think. So like, I just think there's so many inconsistencies with the rule sets, even with rule sets that like think they have it down, like fight to win. You know, there's iffy decisions there. IBJJF, the list goes on. So I just really think that we need to like sit down with each tournament and really tell them like, listen, these are the guidelines. Give me the guidelines. Show me what you're scoring on. and go from there, because some of these rule sets are just, the decisions are unreal.
Right. And you brought up a good point too. I mean, it's interesting. Not that the people that aren't creating some of these rule sets, obviously they're in the sport, but are they really listening to the athletes and what the athletes see as some of the issues with the rule sets?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, like, again, I just like submission only because I don't like to have to worry about points. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's the main reason why I prefer them. I remember like the first submission only I did was, I think I was like 14 or 15 years old. And that one was like a no time limit submission only. So you literally were going until someone got a submission. There was no like decision or anything. So I had like a 40-something minute match with like this girl. Like there was like blood all over our gis and stuff. But it was so, I think that's why I liked it so much. Because again, once you win something like that, it's just like you feel like such a savage, and you're like, oh yes, I did that, I won that.
Yeah, no, you're right, because you feel like you earned it, right? It took you 45 minutes to get there. You earned that victory.
Yeah, exactly. But again, it's just like it's hard to do that kind of rule set if you want a spectator watching it. And I think it's like another problem too. I'm not a spectator of the sport as much as I love jiu-jitsu and love doing it. Like I don't really love to watch it. I
have to agree with that.
I think it gets so boring. I love watching wrestling, and I didn't even really get into watching wrestling until I started dating my boyfriend a couple years ago, and he wrestled since he was 4, and he was like, wrestling is so much more entertaining. He's like, you have to come to my nephew's like high school states match, like you have to or regionals match, you have to come watch it. And I was like, okay. And then when I saw it in person, I'm like, oh my god, this is freaking fun, because everyone gets pumped. It's short, like little 3-minute bursts. So everyone has to move. There's no stalling. There's none of that bull crap. It's just go, go, go. And it's such a different environment of like with like the people, the crowd gets into it so much more.
I literally sent my student just yesterday a clip of Yanni Diakomahalis, one of the favorite wrestlers I like to watch. I mean, I watch wrestling more now than I'm watching jiu-jitsu. It's insane, because I think we have to learn from that, like the rule sets. But I feel like, wrestling, it's gotten to that, like, it's, for me at least, watching it, the pace of it, the constant dynamic movement of it, it's so much more exciting, than jiu-jitsu. Even the fact that it doesn't have, submissions. I think we have to learn from that. I mean, I'm watching guys like Yanni Diakomahalis. I mean, all of the big names, the way they're scrambling, I'm actually tying that into my own jiu-jitsu game now. But I think we can take a lesson from the rule set of wrestling that over how many hundreds of years. I mean, you got to go back to then, right? Like that's been evolving in the rules to always keep it like action packed. And what are they doing? It's in freestyle, it's 1 point if you go out of the ring. You know what I mean? So then people don't even want to get near to the end of the ring, and there wouldn't be any, like laying towards the end or going out of bounds and resetting and all this other stuff like in jiu-jitsu, or like, escapes. If the guy on bottom gets up and stands up without the guy on top holding him down, that should be a point of make people get, you got to hold the person down more. It's so many things we can learn from wrestling.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I guess, one to make a new rule set, but I think we need to relook at some of the rule sets that we have now.
Well, and even some of the, I mean, let's be honest, even some of the techniques in wrestling that a lot of people have not incorporated into jiu-jitsu. I mean, we see so much more, over the last few years, but even just simple like takedowns, like sit out, turn ins,
switches,
like really stuff.
Switches, even funk rolls. I'm tying them into my bottom game, and it's so cool. I mean, that's like the mindset of always growing and always evolving. I feel like with IBJJF, did they do a good thing in the beginning? Yeah, they made something organized. They created a point system for people to follow. But then I think what exposed the IBJJF just recently in kind of deterring the sport a little bit is they made heel hooks legal. And I think it was purely a money play because they were losing business. So they made heel hooks legal. And then we were just at the No-Gi Worlds in Texas. And what did we see? We didn't see any 50-50 double sitting, 50-50 seesawing back and forth. Because if you open your legs in the brown and black belt adult division, you're getting your heel ripped. So we saw a lot more activity then. And I think it exposed like the IBJJF because, they didn't really evolve the rules. They just wanted to keep the money machine running,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I am considering competing again for IBJJF just because now that I'm going towards more MMA, I still want to be like active with my jiu-jitsu, and I want to keep jiu-jitsu like jiu-jitsu, not MMA jiu-jitsu. I think I'm going to start competing in more of like the worlds and look for
Awesome.
things to do just to kind of stay active with jiu-jitsu.
Oh man, especially after that Gabi win, you would be the Flow Grappling would be following you whatever tournament you're going into.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be watching all your matches.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and how are you like? How do you separate that? Like, so what do you have coming up next? If you have an MMA fight or if you have a grappling fight, I mean, like you just said, MMA, jiu-jitsu and MMA is totally different than just pure grappling.
Yeah. So for MMA, when I have like fights and when I'm in fight camp for that, I'm strictly focusing on just pure MMA jiu-jitsu, and then my rest days will usually be just regular jiu-jitsu, where I'm not like punching. When I'm not getting punched, then I'm able to just like flow and stuff like that. So it actually makes me appreciate regular jiu-jitsu way more when I get these things, being able to do straight jiu-jitsu. I'm like, man, this feels really good. But once I start doing like more jiu-jitsu tournaments, I think it just depends. I'll have to like prepare for like when I'm fighting MMA and then when I want to do a tournament, just to separate them so I'm not all over the place.
That's awesome. And let's go over some of all of your social media. Is it just, so I know you're on Instagram, Amanda Leve MMA, is it right?
And Levy_MMA.
_MMA, nice. And what are some of your sponsors? Give your sponsors a shout out here.
Skilled Violence, they sponsored me for Who's Number One. So they got it. They definitely got their money's worth with that one. So their rash guards are freaking awesome. So thank you to them. And then MMA Coin, they sponsored me for Who's Number One too. So I'm extremely grateful for them. And then if anyone else wants to sponsor me, hit me up on my Instagram.
Oh, definitely. I'm sure you're going to get some sponsorship opportunities for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, so specifically next, I mean, you just did the WNO, but is there literally something coming up, or you're not sure yet?
Not sure yet. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be in the PFL tournament because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but so like the PFL has like a season of their fights, and then you accumulate points with how you win throughout the whole the whole year, and then at the end of the year they do playoffs, and then you can win $1 million. So that's like my goal, and it's just really nice because I don't have to cut weight. I usually fight at 145. Well, I would prefer to fight at 145 just because it's an easy weight cut for me. But it's really, really nice. I'm not having to cut weight and just walking around and just walking on the scale to 155 because they only have a 155 division. So when I was like the night before my weigh-ins, this never happened to me ever in my entire life. The night before weigh-ins, I was able to drink like 3 bottles of water, eat.
Damn.
And I actually went downstairs to weigh in just to check my weight on the scale. But I had like my meal in like a bag. And then I had like 2 water bottles in my other hand. And I stepped on the scale to make sure that if I ate and drank all of that, that I'd still weight. And it was. So I was watching all these girls be miserable cutting weight. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go upstairs and eat my steak.
Yeah. That right there, you got right in their heads right at that point.
It just, I feel like I focus so much of my time worrying about my weight and focusing on weight cutting, and then just being able to have a camp where you're just worrying about technique and learning is just so different. It's like the biggest game changer.
And you can keep your body like, where it wants to sit more in your natural weight is always better, so
sure, I've never felt going into my last fight than any other fight or tournament ever.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, but we'll definitely give you a little shout out here because, guys, anybody listening, academy owners, Amanda Leve is definitely open for seminar opportunities at any academy. And speaking of that, we're going to have Amanda Leve out at my academy at Hampton's Jiu-Jitsu Saturday, November 13th, 1 p.m. So anybody East Coast, Tri-State, Long Island, make sure you hit me up, reserve your spot. And she's available for seminars, wherever. Definitely want to see how she exposed the back and, did some of those amazing things that we saw on Flow Grappling there.
Yeah, you need to make it like a back taste series, Amanda.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. BJJ Fanatics, get on that. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Amanda, really appreciate you coming on. Make sure you stick with us after the show. We got a couple of things for you. And guys, make sure you follow Amanda Leve on Instagram, all social media. Keep an eye out for her on Flow Grappling, any of her future events, MMA, grappling. We definitely look forward to it. Make sure you guys subscribe to our newsletter. Make sure you check out jujitsumotivation.com. And yeah, so good luck to you. We're going to be following all your matches. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.